The Batman, First Night, Issue 3, Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins. I don't know if you've been on for any of these issues so far.
I was on for the first one.
Were you? Okay, okay. Good, good.
Yeah.
In that case, I don't remember what you thought of. I assumed you liked it then.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. It's very good. I actually, for some reason, I thought this was issue 2. I didn't realize we'd had 2 already. And it got to like 2/3 through this issue. And I went, this feels like it's getting to the conclusion of stuff. And I'm like, oh, it is issue 3. Oh, never mind.
That's not a great sign.
I don't think it's a bad sign.
Well, I mean, the fact that you're forgetting an entire issue's worth is not ideal.
Well, no, but I didn't forget anything that happened in the issues. I just felt like, oh, like, if anything, it's a good sign because it felt like, despite being 50 page per issue, it didn't feel like I'd read 100 pages. It felt like, because
as someone who just read 100 pages back to back, I could tell you it felt like I read 100 pages.
It's very good though. I like this quite a bit. No,
I liked each issue less and less than the first.
Oh, that's a shame.
Which I thought the first one was really solid, and it's not like it's terrible by the end. Or we're that clear. Art is still gorgeous throughout.
Oh, the art is absolutely stunning throughout.
But I found I was like the writing just wasn't doing it for me as much each issue. It was just kind of a little bit worse. I'm like, I'm not big on that. There's little bits here and there that overall just made me feel a bit more meh on it by the end.
I was mostly pretty happy with it. Obviously, they had that cliffhanger at the end of last issue where Batman like picks up the gun and he's like, "Oh, maybe Gordon's right. Maybe I should use this." And we kind of, barring a little tease of something else, kind of start off with that, where the actress who's kind of getting interested in him walks in and he's like standing in his batsuit. This is the sort of thing where if this was in like a present day Batman story, I'd be like, what the hell? There's no way Batman's this stupid to just be standing around and letting people walk in. But of course, this is early days. There's no Alfred. There's a lot of reasons why this works in the context of this Black Label story. Yeah. But she's freaked out, obviously, by what he's wearing. She's freaked out that he's holding a gun. In this conversation, by and large, like, because he basically talks about how, oh yeah, his dad had all these guns, but there was like a horrible like accident or shooting that he had to deal with as a doctor once that made him completely like reconsider hunting and things like that. It's like, oh, not only does he, I mean, it's presumably his dad never approved of shooting humans because, why would he? But even after like treating this gunshot wound, he didn't even want to shoot animals anymore. He's like, no, this is horrific. I'm never doing it again. So I thought that was an interesting little quirk to add in there, that his dad had made that turn at some point in his life. It's interesting to me.
This is one of those things that for me was just kind of like these little things that I found were a bit unnecessary. That it felt like it was, for me, adding stuff for the sake of adding. Like it felt like it had to justify why this was existing as its own mini, and like, we've got to add something new to the lore here by creating this, instead of just going with, hey, I hate guns now because my parents were killed with guns. Like it was trying to add more to it. I don't feel like it needed more.
I don't feel like it does anything negative here though, or is it disservice?
It just feels like overwritten to me.
I mean, I think thematically it fits in well enough with this idea of like just the characters in general in this, and the idea of like treating other humans, like obviously that ties into all the stuff talking about what's going on.
I think for me, that's where I'm getting to, is like the whole idea here where he's contemplating using guns for the first time, which, okay, I'm fine with that because it's early days Batman. He's going to make that hard choice. You know, when we got to you get to that cliffhanger at the end of the second issue, you assume the follow up is in the final issue. He's making that hard choice to not use them. I think the whole idea of just, oh well, my dad didn't like guns either. Like when you're doing this at the same time as World War II, and I'm like, you've got all these examples of horrific gun violence that you could be taking to add to, if you're going to take a further reason beyond just his parents were killed with guns. If you want to take something further, you've got that's happening right now for him. It just feels like such a frustrating opportunity to miss, to just use that. There was a hunting accident with my dad once. Things like that. It's bugging me. Like the way they're using the war setting in this. Like at this point, like it's barely used. Like there's one point in this where they go, oh, who have you got in there? Hitler. I'm like,
I
Uh,
mean, no, I
uh,
disagree with that because the entire motivation for the villain is that he wants to take control to stop America from sending anyone to war. He's going for a whole America first thing, and he doesn't want America to get involved in the war. And it mentions it on the news at one point that America's not joined. So this is pre Pearl Harbor.
yeah.
Presumably,
Yes.
in the DC universe, Pearl Harbor is still what gets Americans on board. But obviously, the idea that should we get involved was already a thing, and that's very much what it's
Yes.
playing with here. So I do think it is using the time period and the setting in that sense. Plus, you also have the rabbi character who has been like
Yes.
a throughout the whole thing. So, and one of the things that comes up in the news at the end of this issue as well is the idea that America's actually still turning away boats of Jewish people like refugees and sending them somewhere else because it doesn't want to accept them. Like that's they're playing with those things throughout the entire story.
They are, but for me, very little of it is influencing Bruce, right? There are these circumstantial events are happening, but none of it's impact. Not very little of it is impacting any of the decisions he's making to be Batman. I think that's for me part of the appeal. When I read this, the first issue of we're setting it here is okay. We're doing wartime Batman. That's the creation of Batman is during the war. How does that impact the sort of Batman he becomes? How does that change the choices he makes to become Batman? And it doesn't.
I mean, I think part of it is the idea that you've got this rabbi character who is struggling with what's going on in the world and trying to keep his faith and trying to still be who he believes he should be. And you've got Bruce interacting with him. I think there's meant to be a direct contrast here of Batman going through something horrific. Wayne's get murdered, right? That whole backstory. And the idea of what he's doing as a result of that, and you're comparing that to this man who's going through right now this horrific large world event that is tied directly to his type of people, and how to sort of try and keep hope in the middle of all that. I think there is something there thematically that they're doing with kind of challenging Batman up against like a sort of real scenario like that, and like because we don't have an Alfred here, right? That was a conscious choice to not have an Alfred, and I think this rabbi character is meant to be kind of imparting some kind of wisdom and lesson onto Bruce that he's not getting. And I think that even this actress character is also kind of there to fill in part of that role too. It kind of feels like there's no Alfred, but we're going to have like a few different, like Gordon as well is going to kind of even do a little bit of that too, without knowing that he's Batman, obviously.
What I kind of like is, was not having Alfred a conscious choice, or was it a case of how can we possibly justify having a Brit here serving an American like this when he should be at war?
I mean, that may have been
Like,
part of the choice as well. Maybe
yeah.
that could have been the start of that thought process. Is like, well, why would he be here now? If I mean, the answer is because he's too old to be a soldier, honestly. But
yes, but you would think let's say they made the choice that we're going to have Alfred. The war's going on. He's too old to be serving. But you'd still go like, but why is he here and not helping his country in other ways? Or why is he not, doing this or that? I think it raised probably too many questions for them to want to. Like, there are, but I think it raised too many questions for them to want to fit into this series.
I wonder if they considered it right, and maybe initially Alfred was going to be the character who was like maybe going through this idea of like his homeland is at war and it's a very bad, horrific war, and he's kind of like maybe he was going to be the one sort of talking about what his people's going through. And then at some point they realize, well, that works, but it's way more impactful if you've got a Jewish person talking about what's happening because it's even more horrific. It's even more just straight up victims as opposed to being at war. I mean, it is a war as well, don't get me wrong, but it's obviously a far more ruthless in that sense. So, it feels like there has been some conscious choices along the way. Now, what order those choices were made in, I'm not sure, but like I can kind of see how they got to some of these ideas going through that process. I think it's interesting. I do like that they're dealing with this idea of monster men, since one of the classic stories of like what happens in early Batman's is this idea of the monster men, and this take on it I think is interesting. The idea that you've got this. I mean, I don't think he ever comes out overtly as some sort of white supremacist, but I don't necessarily think that anything about this villain makes me think he isn't. Like, it kind of feels like he is that type of guy.
Yeah.
And the way he's talking about the country and he wants to take control. And I think at one point he even says that everyone needs to be forced to see this as the right way. So he's not trying to prop up some new democracy. He wants to be calling the shots. And the irony, whether or not he's realizing this or not, is that he effectively wants to be America's Hitler by the sounds, or at least Gotham's Hitler by the sound of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But he does say he wants to spread it to other cities. Now, whether or not he wants to be the one in control of those cities, or he wants others like him to like, okay, this is going to be Jimmy's like metropolis over there.
Yeah. Great choice of name there for that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even mean that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Jimmy Olsen. Metropolis is Hitler.
I didn't mean to imply Jimmy Olsen would be the. It was just that.
But you use Jimmy in Metropolis.
Sorry, Jeremy. Jeremy will be. Yeah.
Yeah, much better.
So anyway, but yeah, Bruce is doing some testing on this monster man, and she's kind of like freaked out by it. But he develops a weapon to sort of like, so he basically discovers these monster men are going to die no matter what. They're basically, whatever they're doing to them is temporary. They'll only be alive for maybe a week, and then they'll just sort of deteriorate and die. Which is interesting because it means later on when he's spraying them with this gas, and he gives Gordon this gas as well to spray on them, or this liquid to spray on them, it speeds up the process. And I thought that was an interesting question to sort of like pose of like, well, he is kind of killing them then at that point, even though it's going to happen no matter what, and they are monsters at this point. There's an interesting little discussion point to be had there, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of they're already dead. They are literally the Walking Dead at this point.
They're like zombies,
the sentence has already been passed. It's just a matter of time.
I think it did make him feel a little bit colder than like modern Batman, though. Still, he felt like he had he's not willing to kill people with a gun or anything like that, but it did feel like, because at one point he yells to the bad guy, "You're going to get the chair," and I feel like modern Batman wouldn't be rooting for that, but Batman in 1941, sure.
That's the get the chair line definitely stuck out.
Yeah, that feels like, okay, this is a Batman of a different era. So the big part of the plot of this issue is that they captured like the main henchman for the bad guy, which is Jimmy. Funnily enough, Jimmy something is his name. And it's the idea is that the voice, the bad guy, is going to like be sending everyone he's got to try and kill him before he can talk to the police. So we get a bunch of scenes with the police outside, sort of watching over. I think the warden of the prison's meant to be the main red herring for who the voice could be. There's a lot of like hints that it could be him. He'd have access to the prisoners, since all the people turn into monsters are like, all people who are about to be executed. So they do a big reveal where it's actually the prison guard who's kind of working under him, and which I think is almost kind of smart because the uniform is very kind of like military looking. He's got like the strap that looks almost like a Nazi uniform kind of thing. I think it's an intentional choice. But there's a lot of great art here. There's Batman jumping on like the top of the car that's transporting Jimmy's body back to the villains and stuff like that. You've got another subplot here where you'll remember that the brothel owner was told by Batman that to stay in business he has to offer protection to the synagogue. So sure enough, when the bad guys are doing their big plan, which is to like set fire to a lot of the city, one of the targets is the synagogue, and the rabbi's sort of pleading with them, and it's this brothel owner who comes out with 2 pistols and kind of fends them off. So we get this kind of unlikely partnership of them fighting side by side, kind of with the crooks, which I thought the art here looked great, like all the mist and smoke of the city and coming from the fire and stuff. Gave it a nice bit of atmosphere, I thought.
Yeah, art's great throughout. Perkins has been getting better and better on like every book, and this continues, I think.
Yeah, and they also do kind of the creation of the bat signal here, where they like when he's at the prison, the warden's like, "Oh, I think we saw something up there. Turn on that light," and it's it's a big signal light, and they blast it up, and we get kind of like the idea that he's been lit up by the signal, kind of making the bat signal. Although the art's kind of interesting here because they do a thing where it appears behind them in light as opposed to in shadow, which was an interesting choice. Because it's not a mistake; they've clearly made this creative decision to do it this way, and I almost think it's maybe saying that Batman is a light in the city, almost, or something like that. despite how demonic he looks and how everyone thinks of him as or something. I don't know. I was maybe I'm reading into that too much, but it seemed like an interesting choice to me.
I get. I mean, there has to be a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
You don't make that choice randomly. It's not a mistake.
Yeah, they understand how lights and shadows work.
Yeah, I mean, you literally see it like the page before you see, the bat shadows as a silhouette with like the green lights around him. So like, obviously they understand that. It is that next page where you see like almost the astral projection kind of version of the symbol of the bat. I assume, to be honest, that it's not literal. Like that's not there.
Oh,
almost.
for sure. No, I agree. It's not. It's that's more a artistic representation for us than it is a. Yeah.
But
that makes sense.
Looks good. Looks very good.
Yeah. They do a good job with this guy who turns out to be the voice though. Like he's got that kind of bony face that makes him look kind of like evil. Like he just looks very sinister as soon as he starts revealing who he is. So yeah, he ends up his demise is pretty nasty though because he ends up giving himself a shot of the monster serum on his own, which I mean Batman kind of diverts his hand to do it, so I think it's left a little bit ambiguous as to if Batman like intentionally injected him with it, which
yeah,
because when Gordon asks like, oh, what happened, he's like, oh, he injected himself with the monster serum, and because he'd already had the antidote or the gas that he made to like speed up the process,
just went straight through him.
Yeah, he just immediately turned into a monster and died. But when you look at the panel where he actually does the little motion to hit the hand, it does kind of feel like, oh, that may have been an intentional like sort of reversal to do it, as opposed to like an accidental thing where the guy chose to do it or accidentally, syringed himself. But
I think it's a involuntary thing. Like I think because he's defending himself, he pushes it back round, and then it goes into him. So and then I think he tries to like justify it to himself a little bit, like yeah, he did it to himself. But I don't know, like he is immediately there going, our price has to be paid for the lives you've taken. So
yeah,
it definitely feels kind of vicious.
Yeah, feels a bit colder. And again, I'm okay with it because it's a Black Label book with a very different Batman. It's the sort of thing where if you do this with modern like DCU Batman, I'll be like, what are you doing here? We're but this gets to be different. This gets to be a slightly darker Batman.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fun moment. Also, Batman like flies a plane over the city at the end to like try and like get rid of all the fires. He drops like he drops the like canisters of this gas to like get all the monsters to stop attacking people and stuff. So it's kind of a big moment. He does let the plane just go into a tower at the end. He just sort of jumps out of it, which
he does not care about collateral.
Feels a bit reckless. I mean, I assume he knows there's no one there, otherwise he wouldn't do it. But it feels a bit. I don't know. It's a bit reckless.
Flimsy little plane as well.
Yeah.
It's not like a modern plane going into a building.
Oh, it's a biplane. Yeah, it's this ancient looking thing, which makes sense given the time period. But like I say, though, the art in all of this is really good. There's like maybe one panel that I don't love, which is actually just after the bad guy starts turning into the monster. Batman's head looks a little bit oddly shaped, but it's like one panel of like a dodgy,
that big middle one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just at an odd angle, I think.
Yeah. It's not a huge deal, but it is.
It just makes the ears look really rounded, more like horns than ears in that one. It just makes the whole head look a bit odd.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a scene with Batman talking to the rabbi about making a difference, and it's kind of this somber final thing, and the rabbi offers, like, even invites him to like a gathering, and he's like, nah, that's not for me. But so it ends in kind of a hopeful note. The sun's rising over Gotham. It's like, I really enjoyed this book. I think the art obviously is a big part of it. It's gorgeous. I'm not saying the story's always like completely great, but like I think it fits together well enough, and it is a sort of darker, edgier Batman, but not in like a try-hard emo kind of way, because I'd hate that, but more in a like, no, we're in 1941 and things are a bit grittier and a bit more hard-boiled. and I'm kind of okay with that.
Fair enough.
And a Black Label book, you know, I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not...
Yeah, for me, let's say, it just didn't do enough with its time to influence Batman's choices. Like, obviously, he's a different man, but it didn't do enough with the like if you're saying it during the war, like it just didn't do enough with that for me to influence, you know, him becoming Batman. And I felt it was just a bit overwritten by the end. Like, I enjoyed each issue less and less, but it was never like bad. But yeah, I just didn't love it by the end.
Yeah. Obviously, the art's absolutely stunning, pretty much throughout. I think Perkins keeps getting better and better. Every time he does a new book, I feel like he levels up a little bit and like refining his style. And I think this is just gorgeous, pretty much from start to finish. Yeah. So I would recommend this as an overall story. I think this is like a 150-page Black Label, you know, trade or collection. I think it'll be a really easy read and something that's really not what I'd recommend first, but certainly something that's a very standalone thing to recommend to people. Like a lot of these Black Label things end up being, I suppose. But
that is kind of the point of them.
Yeah, but it's very good. It wouldn't shock me if we get a sequel or something at some point. You know, like because there's stuff here that could be explored. Down
it does, and I said at the first one, I want to see this world with a Superman, with a Wonder Woman. Maybe as we get into you know America, getting involved in the war, see kind of these superheroes at that level. Obviously, we've seen DC stuff at that point before with JSA, but I want to see it with our core heroes and kind of see that take. All right,
so Super-Man, the first day, and Wonder Woman. I guess no hyphen because it's already 2 words. Wonder Woman, the first dawn. There you go.
Sure.
There's your name.
I think there's an easy trilogy of books in that.
I could see it. Yeah, if they're all set during this time, you could have Wonder Woman being appalled at man's war because that's going on, and then Superman, you do.
I think you take the journalist route, right?
Yeah. I suppose you would.
I like him going there to report on the war and him being, I think, you know, an in-person reporter. I think that's the angle you take for that.
Yeah. All right. What are you rating Batman: The First Night, issue 3?
I'm gonna give it a 6.
Okay. I am going with. I still really liked it. I'm going to 8.5. Like, I still think it was a really, really solid final issue. Maybe not my favorite of the 3 issues necessarily, but I had a good time. It was kind of pulpy in places. Art is gorgeous. Yeah, I'm into it.